Just think about it. Oh, there's some Marines thinking about it. I know. I'm always ashamed of me. Part of the promise that I make to the families that I work with, and I've been doing this now for 12 years, is that whenever I speak, at the very least, when you leave the room, you won't forget. So I'm going to burden you all with never forgetting today with an image I did 2 weeks ago. And this image goes with me every time I talk now, and it usually stands next to me. Again, just so people know what I'm doing. You see that drawing right over there? It says never forget on it. That's a widow from Iraq holding her 5-year-old daughter, holding their 12-week-old son and brother that the father never saw. She was pregnant when he went to war, and he never came home. So when I did that drawing of Tiffany's father, or husband, pardon me, she sent me a lot of photographs, and I've kept that one. He was about 7, 8 years ago when he died. And the other day I thought, there isn't a more perfect image that describes why it's necessary for all of us to remember. You know, I don't know how you folks handled Vietnam when you came home, but I know I was nuts for about 5 years, I guess. I didn't do anything to hurt anybody, but I know I was, doing everything I can wrong. And I had people grab hold of me and just try and straighten me out a little bit, saying, there's other things in life you have to work out, and you're going to help you do that. So sometimes it's hard to remember. It's to never forget means to remember. So what I'm really asking you to do is remember. All of us, or a lot of us in this room, have lost friends. I did. I wanted to forget about it when I got home. That's how I was going to get through. Now I remember. In fact, I'm going to tell you a little story. Paul and I were both with 3-4 in Vietnam at the same time. There was a young man, his name was Vincent Santinello. He was our company driver. On March 28th, 1968, we were in a little place called Cam Lo. I'm proud to say, to add to what you said earlier about me, I spent 56 days at Con Tien at the DMZ in the summer of '67. When our unit left, they limited it to 30 days. Nobody was going to spend more than 30. It was a bad place. So we saw a lot of people. But we'd been through a lot through tech. We'd been sent to Cam Lo and to rest, really. And a lot of the units that were in that area were out on patrol. So we were pretty secure. We felt, we figured we were all right. And all of a sudden, incoming. Now, what the Vietnamese like to do, and I'm just reiterating some of this to those of us who were there, they would rocket us until they got us deep in our holes, and then they would overwhelm us while we were still in our holes. That's what they were hoping for. But we learned our lesson. They never learned theirs. But as soon as the incoming started, we all hit our holes. But we knew we were going to have to pop out. We were going to have to anticipate when it was going to stop and come out. And we did that, and we were ready. On the perimeter at Cam Lo that day, there were 26 of us, because everybody else was on patrol. For whatever reason, the Vietnamese didn't come. If they had, I'd be dead, because we couldn't stop them. Once we realized they weren't coming, and they did come about an hour later, we feel it was our time to go out and try and take a look at the wounded. We needed to fix our guys. And one of our people who was wounded was Vinny. And he was a friend of mine. He was our company driver. And he had just come into the perimeter with the mail when the rounds started coming in. He had no chance. He was gravely injured, feeling no pain, and in my arms. My two corpsman friends that are still my corpsman friends to this day, Tony and Doc Nunn, we were trying to keep Vincent alive. And Vincent looked at me in my arms, looked me right in the face, and he said, "Mike, I just want to go home." And he died. closed his eyes. That face has been with me since that day. Now, the battle went on for 2 more days after that, and a lot of people died, but they were the first 2. He was the first one, and another friend of mine named Peter Armstrong was the second one. These are the 2 people I took care of right away. But the reason I'm telling you that story is, last year, about 1.5 years ago, we had an event at the Nile, and I thought what a great opportunity it would be for me to find out if somebody from Vinny's family were alive somewhere, to present them a portrait, as I've been doing for the last 10.5 years. And we found a niece, a nephew, and a brother in New York. Some people at ABC Radio helped me find them. I told them who I was and told them what I wanted to do. ABC called me back, said they found somebody. I said, can you give me their contact information so I can get a hold of them? He said, you don't need to, because they've been looking for somebody who knew Vinny. They're going to be calling you. A few months later, Ralph Vincent Morales, named after Vinny, showed up in Seattle and spent the weekend with my wife and I at an event. The interesting part about this was the heart of this project. He hadn't seen the portrait I've done of Vinny. I actually did 2, one for me, one for him. We were going to present it to him at an event at the Nile on that Saturday night. Friday night, he's sitting with me in my studio. That's where this piece was shot. He was sitting on the floor, and we were just talking about the project. We were talking about Vietnam. We were talking about that time. We were talking about Vinny. And I had this reflection. I said, this whole project is because what Vinny told me to do. I said, when he looked me in the face, what he left me with when he closed his eyes was he just wanted to go home. And basically what he was telling me is I need to do everything I can do to bring as many home as I can in whatever fashion necessary. And if it's just spiritual, that's what we're going to do. And Ralph shook his head. His family had been destroyed by Vinny's death. And he looked at me and he said, you know, I just realized something. And it's going to change our whole family dynamic in New York. I said, what's that? He said, Vinny didn't die for nothing. He said, all those families that you've been working with for 10 years, Vinny's a part of that. I said, no, Vinny's the cause of that. 12 years ago, Evening Magazine did a small piece on my art. I'd done a lot of charity work, and what I'd done is a lot of celebrity portraits. And what I would do when I was with celebrities like either Harrison Ford or President of the United States or Katharine Hepburn or any of those folks, I'd get them to autograph blank illustration boards, and I'd redo drawings on those boards and I'd give them to charities. And we'd raised like $10 million for charities. So they did a story. They came out to my studio in Edmonton and interviewed me for 7 hours for a 5-minute TV piece. But at the end of the 7 hours, I was so tired, I actually put my hands up on the drawing table and I said, you know what? And the camera was still rolling. I said, I've drawn 6 presidents and first ladies, a pope, oh, by the way, is now a saint, okay? And 137 Playboy playmates. And I shook my head, and the guy says, I guess that about says it all. And I says, I think it does. Now, what I learned that day was that when they edit 7 hours to 5 minutes, they look for stuff like that. And that stuff stayed in the 5-minute piece. That comment, though, is why I'm standing up here today. Because what they decided to do with an Evening Magazine piece in Seattle is they decided to NBC to send it around the country. So about 3 days later, I get a call from a young woman, Sharice Johnson. She's in Boise, Idaho. And I didn't know this was going to happen. She said, I just saw a piece on television about your portraits. She said, how much would you charge me to draw a portrait of my husband? Now, to be honest with you, I was going, I'm going to be rich. National attention, portraits, I'm pretty good, this is going to work out. And she said, he was a corpsman, he died last year in Iraq. So I paused. I said, I'm a Marine combat veteran. I said, corpsmen are the bravest people I know. I said, I can't possibly charge you. So I did the portrait of Michael Johnson. About 2 days after I sent the portrait out, they all go out priority mail, my wife was actually driving me to get a haircut up in Lake Stevens. No, I don't go to that barber anymore. The phone rang. I have a cell phone that's only for fallen heroes and Gold Star families. And Sharice was calling me, and here's what she said. We talked for 20 minutes, but I'm going to give you the crux of what she said. She said, for the year that my husband's been dead, everybody that's loved me has taken care of me. They've done everything they can possibly do. They've taken me to the doctor, they've fed me, they've walked with me, they've cried with me, they've held me, they've done everything. She says, but in a year, she says, the one thing that hasn't happened is I have not slept a full night's through. She said, yesterday I received the portrait you did of my husband, Michael. The minute I pulled it out of the envelope, I looked into his eyes. She says, I connected instantly. We were able to finish conversations over the next couple hours that weren't finished because he was killed. And at the end of it, she said, I looked into his face and I said, I love you. And she says, I felt him tell me he loved me. She said, I'm only calling to say thank you. She said, because last night's the first night in a year I've slept all night. I hung up the phone, I turned to my wife and I said, I told her about the conversation. I said, now we need to do them all. She says, how are we going to do that? And I said, well, I've been doing portraits forever. I said, I can draw the portrait. She said, how are we going to pay for that? I said, we're turning that over to God. That word came out of my mouth like that, because I had no way to pay for this. I had a guy named Dick Friel, who was an auctioneer in Seattle, a good friend of mine who's now passed away, who came out and talked to me after I started this project, and he says, that's the worst business plan in the world. He says, you're an incredible artist offering to do free art for people you don't know all across the country with no support. He said, can you think of anything stupider than that? And I said, I'm a Marine, I'm going to make this work. 12 years later, it's still working. 4,300 portraits later. On top of that, there's something unique happening that I want to make sure you guys know about, because I doubt the press is going to cover this. But this is big. And I'm so excited about this that I have to share it. Who can tell me the official first day and why Memorial Day began in the United States of America? See, it's a Civil War creation. But whenever I ask that question, it's like, with all the people in the room, and we're all pretty smart people, nobody really knows the date. But I'm going to give you some information that you're going to know that nobody else is going to know, and they're certainly not going to understand how you know. A year and a half ago, I was giving a speech out in East Woodinville. A gentleman stands up after my talk. He says, would you consider drawing the 66 Polish Special Forces soldiers who were killed in Iraq and Afghanistan who fought with Americans? I said, of course. How are we going to do that? I'm an artist in Edmonds, Washington. I doubt people in Poland know where Edmonds is, let alone Washington. How do I get in touch with those people? He said, my sister's a doctor in the Polish army. The process began. This week, the first 66 portraits are shipping to Warsaw framed. What I did was 66 original portraits and 66 digital copies that are the same size. The digital copies are all framed, the originals are all framed. The digitals leave this week, like I said, for Warsaw, and they will permanently be displayed in the Polish Veterans Museum in Warsaw. On the 4th of December, the originals are leaving for Warsaw, escorted. They are going to be received in Warsaw by a very large veteran contingent, like if they were flag-draped coffins. And then what they decided to do was create Memorial Day in Poland as an annual event. December 21st, 2015 will be the first celebration of all the veterans who've died in wars from Poland. And they're going to honor that evening by presenting my original portraits to the families of those who fell in Iraq and Afghanistan. So you can't answer exactly how ours began, but a major country, Poland, begins theirs the 21st of December because of this project. In January, I received a phone call from the Medal of Honor Foundation. And what they had said is that I'd been nominated for the Civilian Service Before Self Honors, which is known as the Civilian Medal of Honor. And of course, I thought it was a joke. They said that Medal of Honor recipients had evaluated all the nominations, and I was one of the top 20 finalists. And again, I didn't believe a word they were saying. I thought it was going to be someone that I knew doing a joke. Hung up the phone, called my wife, told her what had just happened. We didn't do anything till the next day when I called him back, and I said, "This is Mike Reagan in Edmonds, Washington. Did you really call me yesterday?" And they started laughing on the other end of the phone saying, "He doesn't believe it was us." I talked to them about what this medal represented. They told me. I was incredibly proud, but I have lots of drawings to do at my house. And I explained to him after a while that as much as I would like to come back to Washington, D.C. as a finalist for this medal, that I'd rather do a portrait and get it home to a wife or a husband or a brother or a sibling of a dead soldier, because that's my life. That's more important. This long pause, and the other end of the line. And they said, "Well, we appreciate your opinion and how you feel about this, and we totally understand it. And the press releases don't come out till Saturday, so you got to keep your mouth shut, but you're a medal recipient, so you got to be here." Let's just say I had an adjective I used at that point, because I don't travel well. And I called my wife and I said, "We're going to Washington, D.C. in March." So what happened is on the 22nd of March, we were there. Monday, the 23rd, I had a choice of whether going to the Vietnam Wall or to Section 60. Everybody knows what Section 60 is, correct? And because my best friend wasn't with me, I didn't go to the wall. But I did say to a Gold Star dad and friend of mine, I said, we'll go to Section 60 and visit your son's grave. And we did that. It's the first time I can actually say the emotions of this project overwhelmed me